Frances told me a few years later that she was sort of thrilled at the way that Diana sort of freed herself, as she saw it, from the shackles of royalty and from being a member of the royal family and striking out on her.
For more than 200 years, some of Britain's most elite families hid a secret so scandalous it had to be wiped clean from history. This wasn't just gossip, it was a calculated cover-up. Records were altered, evidence disappeared, and a mother was separated from her child as if she never existed. They buried the truth so deeply that it stayed hidden until June 14, 2013. That's when scientists revealed a discovery that shook the monarchy in a way no one expected. DNA testing showed that Prince William, the future King of England, carries Indian ancestry. His great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was not who the royal family claimed she was. The real story behind her life is difficult to ignore. This is the story of Eliza Carr, the woman history tried to erase, and the discovery that forced the truth into the open. In June 2013, British media focused on a surprising breakthrough from a Scottish DNA research company. Dr. Jim Wilson, a geneticist at the University of Edinburgh, shared findings that could reshape royal history. His team traced Prince William's mitochondrial DNA, passed only through the maternal line, back 7 generations. What they found was extremely rare. William's maternal line carried a genetic marker known as haplogroup R30b. This sequence had only been identified in 14 people worldwide, 13 from India and 1 from Nepal. No one else in Europe carried it. Prince William himself was not directly tested. Instead, scientists analyzed saliva samples from 2 living relatives connected through Princess Diana's maternal line. This line formed an unbroken chain of mothers and daughters, leading back to a woman named Eliza Carr. This is where the story becomes complicated. For over 2 centuries, the Spencer family tree claimed that Eliza Carr was Armenian. Official records stated she came from Armenia, a background considered respectable and acceptable within European society. However, DNA evidence told a different story. Researcher Alistair Moffat investigated Eliza's background and found that her true identity had been deliberately obscured. She was not Armenian. Her origins had been misrepresented and rewritten in family history. This version of events was still accepted when Princess Diana married Prince Charles in 1981. So who was Eliza Carr? Eliza was born around 1790 in Surat, Gujarat, India. At the time, India was under the control of the British East India Company, a powerful organization that governed large parts of the region. Surat was a major trading center, known for its wealth and diverse population. Merchants from different parts of the world lived and worked there. Today, it is known for processing a large portion of the world's diamonds. But in Eliza's time, it was already a place where fortunes were made and lost. Eliza's background reflected this mix of cultures. Her father was likely Armenian, suggested by her surname and letters written to her in Armenian script. The Armenian community had been present in India for generations, building businesses and religious institutions. Her mother, confirmed through DNA evidence, was Indian. In this environment, Eliza met a Scottish merchant named Theodore Forbes. Born in 1788, Theodore was the 3rd son in his family, meaning he was unlikely to inherit wealth or property. Like many men in his position, he traveled to India to seek opportunity. Theodore employed Eliza as his housekeeper, but that role did not fully reflect their relationship. Historical research shows that British men in India often formed relationships with local women that were informal and unequal. Eliza and Theodore had 2 children together. Catherine was born in 1812, followed by Alexander in 1814. Theodore never married Eliza. In official records, he referred to her as his housekeeper and described her as the purported mother of their daughter Catherine, suggesting distance and doubt in his own words. For generations, the family believed their great-great-great-grandmother was Armenian. That version of the story stayed untouched for years. Dr. Jim Wilson later explained that mixed heritage is widely accepted today, but in the past, it was often hidden or denied. Theodore Forbes made that choice early on. He described Eliza only as his housekeeper, making it clear there was no official relationship. That wording wasn't accidental. It showed distance and likely discomfort with both Eliza and their children. So the truth was hidden, and over time, the story changed. Let's follow how that hidden truth moved through the family line. Catherine Scott Forbes had a daughter named Jane Scott. Jane later had a daughter, Ruth Gill. By this point, Ruth appeared fully Scottish, with family roots stretching back generations. The Indian ancestry became less visible, but it never disappeared. It continued to pass quietly from mother to daughter. Ruth Gill married Maurice Roche, the 4th Baron Fermoy. This was a major step up in status. The Roches were part of the Irish aristocracy, and Maurice had connections to King George VI. This placed the family firmly within elite social circles. Ruth and Maurice had a daughter named Frances Ruth Roche, bringing the story closer to a name many recognize. On June 1, 1954, Frances married John Spencer, Viscount Althorp, at Westminster Abbey. The event drew national attention. Queen Elizabeth II attended, along with Prince Philip, the Queen Mother, and Princesses Margaret and Anne. Frances was only 18 years old, making her one of the youngest brides to marry there in decades. The ceremony was widely covered and celebrated. But behind all of that attention, a key part of her ancestry remained unknown, or at least unspoken. Frances carried Indian DNA passed down from Eliza Carr, a woman whose identity had been removed from records more than a century earlier. Frances and John Spencer had 5 children. One of them, a son named John, died just hours after birth in January 1960. The loss was devastating for the family. Then on July 1, 1961, they welcomed a daughter, Diana Frances Spencer. Diana grew up at Park House on the Sandringham estate. She spent her childhood around members of the royal family, including Prince Andrew and Prince Edward. After her grandfather passed away in 1975, and her father became the 8th Earl Spencer, she became Lady Diana Spencer. She quickly became known for her presence, her charm, and how naturally she fit into royal life. Yet within her DNA was something rare, something that had gone unnoticed for generations. A genetic marker known as haplogroup R30b. When Lady Diana Spencer married Prince Charles on July 29, 1981, the world was watching. Around 750 million people tuned in. It was called the wedding of the century, presented as a perfect royal fairy tale. Diana's dress, with its long train, became instantly iconic. Charles wore his naval uniform. The balcony kiss at Buckingham Palace was broadcast across the globe. But even during that moment, the truth remained hidden. Official records still identified Eliza Carr as Armenian. The story held, and the secret stayed intact. Until science stepped in. Mitochondrial DNA works differently from other types of DNA. It passes only from mother to child and changes very little over time. This makes it a powerful tool for tracing maternal ancestry across generations. Prince William carries the same mitochondrial DNA as his mother, Diana. She inherited it from Frances, who inherited it from Ruth, and so on, going back through Catherine and ultimately to Eliza. Nearly 200 years of lineage preserved in a genetic chain. When Dr. Jim Wilson's team analyzed the samples, they identified haplogroup R30b. This marker is extremely rare. Only 14 people worldwide have been recorded with it. 13 are from India, and 1 is from Nepal. None are from Armenia or Europe. The probability of this being a coincidence is extremely low. As Dr. Wilson stated, the evidence is clear and difficult to dispute. Further analysis also showed South Asian ancestry in other parts of Prince William's DNA, reinforcing the conclusion that Eliza's origins were genuinely Indian. When the findings were announced in June 2013, headlines spread quickly across the world. Reports highlighted that Prince William carried Indian DNA and that a long-hidden part of royal history had been uncovered. Genetically, this makes him a very small fraction Indian, but the significance goes beyond percentages. When William becomes king, he will be the first British monarch with confirmed Indian ancestry. This stands in contrast to a time when Britain ruled India and promoted strict ideas about hierarchy and identity. The reaction within the extended family was more open than expected. Mary Roche, a relative of Princess Diana, spoke publicly about the discovery. She said, "I always assumed that I was part Armenian, so I am delighted that I also have an Indian background." Her response showed that even close relatives had believed the original story for most of their lives. The truth had been hidden so well that it shaped generations. Mary contributed to uncovering that truth by providing a DNA sample. Rather than rejecting the discovery, she accepted it with interest, reflecting how attitudes toward heritage have changed. The royal family itself, however, has remained quiet. Prince William and Prince Harry have not made public statements about this part of their ancestry. Since the discovery, there have been no official comments from Clarence House or Kensington Palace. There was also no clear effort to publicly connect with this heritage. Although Prince William visited India in 2016, the trip focused on official duties rather than personal history. The silence raises questions. It may simply reflect a preference for privacy. At the same time, it leaves open the possibility that the topic is still seen as sensitive. There was also a broader context to consider. Strengthening ties with India has long been important for the United Kingdom. A future king with Indian ancestry could have carried symbolic weight in that relationship. India remains a major global power and a key member of the Commonwealth. Yet this discovery was not used in any visible way to shape public messaging or diplomacy. Instead, the story surfaced, made headlines, and then gradually faded without formal recognition. What this story really shows is how history can be shaped by those in power. Eliza Carr's life is an example of how entire identities were edited out when they didn't fit the image people wanted to present. During the time of the British Raj, many women in positions like Eliza's were involved in hidden relationships that were rarely acknowledged. In many of these cases, mixed-heritage children were separated from their mothers and raised in British society, while their origins were kept quiet. Records were limited, details were changed, and over time, the truth became harder to trace. The Victorian era placed heavy importance on ideas of racial hierarchy and social status. These beliefs influenced how families presented themselves. Theodore Forbes likely understood that his children would face barriers because of their background. By taking Catherine to Britain and raising her there, he made a decision that shaped generations. Catherine was able to enter Scottish society and build a life within it. Meanwhile, Eliza was left behind, and her story slowly disappeared. Very little is known about her life, her thoughts, or how her story ended. That silence is part of what makes this history so difficult to fully understand. Even so, her genetic legacy continued. Through generations, it passed down to Prince William's children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Among them, only Charlotte can continue the direct maternal mitochondrial line, making that connection especially rare. This link creates a distant but real connection between the British royal family and millions of people with South Asian ancestry. It also reflects the long and complicated history between Britain and India, shaped by both connection and conflict. Mary Roach's response to discovering her Indian heritage shows how perspectives have changed. What was once hidden is now, in some cases, accepted or even embraced. Still, the fact that this history remained unknown for so long shows how effective those earlier efforts to reshape identity were. Even Princess Diana herself was never publicly aware of this part of her ancestry. It was only confirmed much later through scientific testing. On June 14, 2013, DNA evidence finally brought clarity to Eliza Carr's origins after nearly 2 centuries of uncertainty. That discovery connected her directly to the present. The future King of England carries her DNA, linking her life to a modern global audience. Eliza, whose story was once pushed aside, is now part of a documented historical and genetic record. Her voice was not preserved in writing, but it remains present through inheritance. There are a few clear takeaways from this story. One is that the truth can remain hidden for a long time, but it often finds a way to surface. In this case, science played a major role in revealing what written records did not. Another is that official histories are not always complete. They can reflect the priorities and biases of the people who recorded them, especially when reputation and status are involved. It also shows how ideas about identity, especially rigid views around race or background, can have lasting human consequences. Families were separated and connections were lost over time. Scientific research, in this case, helped fill in those gaps. Dr. Jim Wilson and his team were not trying to uncover a personal story, but their work brought attention to someone who had been largely forgotten. There may or may not be a physical record of Eliza's final resting place. No confirmed grave or marker has been clearly identified. What remains certain is that she lived, had a family, and experienced a separation that changed the course of her descendants' lives. Today, her story is no longer completely hidden. Through DNA evidence, her place in history has been recognized. Prince William's distant Indian ancestry is a small percentage in genetic terms, but it represents something much larger. It reflects a story shaped by relationships, decisions, social pressures, and the passage of time. When people talk about royal lineage and carefully documented family trees, it is worth remembering that not every story was preserved equally. Some were edited out, simplified, or replaced. History is not only what appears in official records. Sometimes the most important parts are the ones that were intentionally left out, and in rare cases like this, generations later, science helps bring those missing pieces back into view. This connection also carries weight beyond genetics. It reflects a shared history that is layered, complicated, and not always comfortable to revisit. The link between Britain and India was shaped by trade, control, and unequal power, and stories like Eliza's sit right in the middle of that reality. For a long time, those stories were pushed aside because they did not fit the narrative people wanted to present. Clean family lines, clear identities, and simple histories were easier to maintain. Anything that challenged that image was often removed or rewritten. Eliza's story breaks that pattern. It shows that behind titles and status, there were real human experiences that didn't always align with the official version of events. Her life connects two very different worlds, and that connection was hidden rather than acknowledged. It also raises questions about how many other stories like this exist but were never uncovered. Not every family has DNA evidence or historical research to fill in the gaps. In many cases, those histories remain incomplete, passed down in fragments, or not at all. What makes this case different is the role of modern science. DNA testing does not rely on written records or social narratives. It provides a separate kind of evidence, one that can confirm connections long after documents have been altered or lost. That shift changes how history can be understood. It allows people to revisit the past with new tools, sometimes confirming what was suspected, and other times revealing something completely unexpected. At the same time, it is important to recognize that DNA alone does not tell the full story. It can show where someone comes from, but it cannot fully explain what they experienced, what they felt, or how they lived day to day. Those parts of Eliza's life are still unknown. Even with that uncertainty, her presence is no longer erased. She is now part of a documented lineage that connects directly to the present. That alone changes how her story is remembered. It also adds another layer to the way people view royal history. The idea of a single, unbroken, and clearly defined lineage becomes more complex when details like this come to light. It shows that identity is often more mixed and interconnected than it appears. In the end, this is not just about one person or one discovery. It is about how history is recorded, who gets remembered, and who is left out. Eliza's story is one example of how those gaps can be revisited, even after centuries. And while many details about her life remain unknown, one thing is clear. She was real, she existed, and her story, once hidden, is now part of a much larger picture that can no longer be ignored. And when you really sit with it, this story is not just about royalty or ancestry. It is about how easily a person can be removed from history when they don't fit the image people want to protect. Eliza Carr was not a myth, and she was not a footnote. She was a real woman who lived in a time where power decided whose story mattered and whose did not. The fact that so little is known about her is not an accident. It is the result of choices made long after she was gone. Her name was replaced, her background was adjusted, and her identity was reshaped into something more acceptable. Over time, that version became the truth that generations believed without question. And that is what makes this story stand out. It shows how something repeated enough times can become accepted as fact, even when it is not accurate. For years, the idea that she was Armenian went unchallenged. It appeared in records, family trees, and official accounts. No one had a reason to question it, and even if they did, there was little evidence to prove otherwise. Then science entered the picture and changed everything. DNA did what documents could not. It connected the present to the past in a direct and measurable way. It did not rely on memory, reputation, or social status. It simply showed a biological link that had always been there. That discovery did more than correct a detail. It restored a part of someone's identity that had been hidden for generations. But even with that, there is still a sense of distance. Knowing where Eliza came from does not fully explain who she was. It does not tell us what she thought about her life, how she felt about her children being taken away, or how she spent her final years. Those parts remain unknown, and they may always remain that way. What can be understood, though, is the impact of what happened to her. A single decision to separate a mother from her child created a ripple effect that lasted for generations. That decision shaped family history, influenced identity, and led to a story being rewritten to fit a different narrative. It also highlights how personal stories can become lost within larger historical systems. The British Empire, trade expansion, and social hierarchy were all forces at play during Eliza's lifetime. Within those systems, individual experiences were often overlooked. Eliza's story is one of many that likely followed a similar path. The difference here is that this one was eventually uncovered. There is also something significant about when this discovery happened. In a time where conversations about identity, history, and representation are more open, this story found an audience willing to listen. Decades earlier, it might have been ignored or dismissed. Now, it is seen as part of a broader effort to understand history more completely. It also changes how people may view the idea of heritage. Instead of something fixed and simple, it becomes something layered and complex. One person's background can carry influences from multiple places, cultures, and histories, even if those connections are not immediately visible. For the British royal family, this adds a dimension that had not been publicly recognized before. It quietly challenges long-standing ideas about lineage and identity, not in a dramatic way, but in a factual one. Prince William's ancestry now includes a confirmed link to India. It is a small percentage in genetic terms, but it represents a connection that reaches across continents and centuries. And beyond the numbers, it represents a person. A woman who lived in Surat, who formed a relationship that was never fully acknowledged, and who lost her child to circumstances she could not control. A woman whose story was set aside, only to be rediscovered through science. There is something striking about that kind of return. Not through written records or preserved documents, but through something carried quietly across generations. It suggests that even when history is altered, not everything can be completely erased. Some traces remain. In this case, those traces were enough to bring attention back to someone who had been almost entirely forgotten. It also leaves an open question. How many other stories like this exist, still hidden in family histories, waiting to be uncovered in similar ways? Not every story will have a clear answer, and not every past can be fully reconstructed. But discoveries like this show that history is not as fixed as it may seem. It can change, expand, and become more detailed over time. And sometimes, those changes come from unexpected places. A DNA sample, a research project, a detail that does not match the official record. Small things that lead to larger realizations. In the end, Eliza Carr's story is no longer completely invisible. It may still have gaps, but it is now part of a wider narrative that includes both the past and the present. It serves as a reminder that history is not just about well-known figures or major events. It is also about individuals whose lives were shaped by the world around them, even if their names were not preserved in the same way. And when those stories resurface, they do more than add information. They change perspective. They show that behind every structured family tree, there are real lives, real choices, and sometimes real losses that were never fully acknowledged. Eliza's story is one of those. Not fully told, not fully known, but no longer completely hidden. And that alone changes how it will be remembered going forward.